Welcome to Cozy Noah Vibes, where we listen, relax, and drift off to sleep. I'm your host, Noah, and I'm so glad you're joining me tonight. We will continue our story of Beauty and the Beast. Let's recap the first part. Due to a disaster, Laurent and his 6 children were forced to give up their privileged life. While the older siblings struggled to adapt, the youngest daughter, Camille, eagerly learned new skills. One day, Laurent returned from a failed visit to a port city and was caught in a storm, forcing him to seek shelter in an ancient, gloomy manor. Inside, he found a table set for one and enjoyed a lavish meal, spending the night in this mysterious house. The next morning, he remembered his promise to Camille to bring back a rose. As he passed through the garden, he picked every rose he saw. When he took the last rose, he heard an angry voice, the voice of the manor's owner. The owner gave him a choice: repay the debt himself or send one of his children to work for him. Back home, Laurent told his story, and Camille, after some thought, decided to volunteer to repay the debt. So, Laurent and Camille traveled back to the fearful gates of the manor. Now, let's take a moment to relax. Close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. If your mind is still active, don't try to resist it. The more we resist, the louder it becomes. Just shift your focus to my voice and your breathing, feeling your chest and abdomen rise and fall. Like clouds floating overhead, your thoughts can come and go. Your consciousness is like the sky, always there. Sometimes there are many clouds, so many that you can't see the blue sky. But remember, your thoughts are like those clouds, and your consciousness is the ever-present blue sky, quietly observing. Eventually, the clouds will clear, revealing the sky once again, bringing clarity and peace. Now, let your imagination guide you as we return to the grand and mysterious manor where Camille and her father have arrived. Camille gazed at the sight before her, eyes wide with wonder. The manor's lush gardens and towering walls were grander than anything she had ever seen. Despite the overwhelming feeling, there was a somber beauty to it. As a girl from a village, Camille was speechless at the enormity of the place, feeling the mystery and timelessness of it. The stones seemed to sleep, as if they had been waiting to be rediscovered. She couldn't help but wonder what kind of work she would be asked to do, hoping it wouldn't be beyond her ability. Laurent stopped the carriage, and as they reached the wide steps, the wind seemed to blow them away from the entrance of the building. He slowly climbed the steps, lifted the heavy door knocker, and let it fall. Father and daughter stood on the steps, waiting, expecting the master of the manor to appear. Unexpectedly, the door was slowly opened by a boy. He was about 13, dressed in simple village clothes, peering at them with frank curiosity from behind the door. He nodded, then asked, "Which one of you is the new servant?" Laurent briefly explained that he had brought his daughter, Camille, to repay his debt. The boy nodded nonchalantly, opened the door wider to let her in, and told Laurent to leave Camille's things in the hall before disappearing into the depths of the house. Camille entered the door, beginning her new life. It was an emotional farewell for Laurent and Camille, but they both remained strong. He and the faithful carriage returned home, not looking back until they left the manor gates. The forest closed in behind them. Camille stood in the echoing hall, dim light streaming through high windows, but it brought no warmth. She suppressed a shiver, approached her suitcase, and told herself to be brave and give it her all. A few minutes later, the boy returned, saying that the Baron wanted him to take her to her room. He cheerfully picked up her suitcase and led her up the grand staircase. Camille followed, surprised to find they weren't heading to the kitchen or basement, but down the first luxurious corridor. They walked silently through the east wing of the manor, passing portraits of former nobility, as if these portraits were the permanent residents and she was an accidental intruder. Camille was so engrossed that she almost bumped into the boy until he stopped in front of a door and pushed it open. She followed him inside, finding herself standing in a richly decorated bedroom. Though not large, the furniture was dignified. The bed drapes, fabrics, and woodwork all luxurious. The boy lit a fire in the fireplace and smiled. "I'm Gabriel. I help out here. It's nice to have you here. It gets a bit lonely." Camille didn't know how to respond, only thanked him for the fire and asked when she would meet her new employer. Gabriel told her the Baron would see her tomorrow and explain her duties. Then, he left the room, silently closing the door. Camille unpacked her things, hung her clothes in the large wardrobe, and placed a few books on the bedside table. She opened the top book, smiled at the pink rose pressed between the pages, closed the book, and went to the window. She pulled back the heavy curtains and sat on the soft window seat. From here, she could overlook the courtyard, where the garden grew wildly around the stone walls. As dusk approached, the wind swirled debris into small whirlwinds. She dozed off from the fatigue of the journey and the strangeness of her new life until a knock at the door woke her. She opened it to find a tray with a simple dinner. Unable to find Gabriel, she brought the tray into the room, ate all the food by the fire, and then went to bed almost unprepared. That night, Camille had strange dreams. She dreamed of walking through dark hallways in the manor, following a large dog. The dog disappeared into room after room, and she tried to keep up until she came to a door and saw a man sitting inside. When the man turned, she suddenly woke up, seeing the fire had gone out and sunlight streaming through the window. She heard a knock at the door and found Gabriel standing outside with breakfast. After breakfast, Camille came to the Baron's study as requested. She heard the rustle of paper inside and gently knocked on the door. Moments later, a severe-looking large man appeared at the door, his face naturally frowning, looking rather intimidating. Camille politely lowered her head and greeted him. The man nodded and let her sit by the fireplace, then sat in the opposite armchair. "You're here to repay your father's debt, aren't you? Can you do basic household chores?" he asked, Camille nodded. The man nodded satisfactorily, picked up a heavy bunch of keys from the table, and said, "I'm short of help here. Gabriel takes care of my basic needs, and his mother brings bread, milk, and eggs every day. But other than that, it's just me managing the manor. If you need anything Gabriel can't provide, you can come to me. Other than that, I expect you to make decisions on your own. I spend most of my time in the study or library." Camille could only nod in acknowledgement. Then, he abruptly stood up, ending the meeting. Camille rose to take the ancient keys, nodded in thanks, and left the room. As she exited, he called out to her again, "Dinner is at 7. You can join me." Camille smiled and thanked him, leaving the study, standing in the foyer, somewhat bewildered by the heavy keys. She didn't know what doors they unlocked, but they seemed to carry a certain authority. She told herself, life here won't be too bad. However, in the luxurious and lonely backdrop, she felt a slight unease. She didn't know the Baron's secrets or what her future life would be like. The next morning, she began her work. She cleaned the foyer and the living room, but most of the rooms were locked. Gabriel explained that the Baron valued his privacy greatly. Camille could only work in the designated rooms and gardens. Even so, she felt a strange force in the manor, an unseen but undeniable presence. Every night, she dined at opposite ends of the table with the Baron, who seldom spoke. She learned to accept this silence, adapting to the rhythm of the manor. As time passed, she began to notice some strange phenomena. She found well-pruned rose bushes in the garden, though she had never seen anyone tending to the flowers. She heard soft footsteps in the hallways at night, but every time she checked, she found nothing. Gabriel told her the manor had many unsolved mysteries, and the Baron sometimes disappeared into his study for hours, no one knowing what he was doing. Despite these odd occurrences, Camille gradually adapted to her new life. She found herself enjoying the tranquility of the manor and the beauty of the gardens. She began to feel a strange intimacy, as if she had an inseparable connection with the manor. One day, while working in the garden, she heard familiar footsteps in the distance. She turned to see the Baron standing by the rose bushes, silently watching her. Camille approached him and asked, "Who tends to these flowers? They look so beautiful." The Baron watched her for a while, then smiled and said, "That's my secret." He turned and walked away, leaving Camille deep in thought. The story will pause here. Now, let yourself fully relax and slowly savor the charm of this wonderful world. You'll find that Camille's adventure has just begun. Wherever your thoughts may wander, remember to stay calm and immerse yourself in this mysterious story. Now, close your eyes, take a deep breath, relax, and enjoy this peaceful night. Wishing you a beautiful dream. This is Noah, wishing you good night.